It was supposed to be nothing more than a quiet walk on a cold February afternoon in Ohio. Three teenage boys cut through a wooded ravine near a river, the kind of place where you expect mud, branches, maybe a lost soda can. Instead, in the leaves, they spot something pale that looks wrong. At first, they think it might be an animal bone. Then they notice a human skull looking back at them. If you're the kind of person who likes to drift off while listening to slow, strange stories like this one, stories where a small detail in a forgotten book can change everything, then consider subscribing to Sleep to Stories. You can leave a like and turn on the little notification bell so these cases can quietly find you the next time you're getting ready for bed. For now, though, let's go back to that ravine and to the line of text that would wake this cold case up decades later. It is February 1975 near Strongsville, a suburb outside Cleveland in northern Ohio. Mill Stream Run Reservation is a large green area there with hills, trees, and a river called Rocky River that cuts a deep ravine through the landscape. Local kids go there to walk, to hang out, to feel a little bit away from the city. On one of those cold afternoons, three teenage boys walk along a path near the ravine. The ground is uneven. Roots stick up. There is snow in some spots. In others, it is just wet earth and dead leaves. As they move along the path, one of the boys looks down the slope. He sees something white between brown leaves. At first, he thinks it is just a branch or maybe a piece of trash, but it has a curve that looks almost round. He tells his friends to stop. They step closer to the edge and look down. The white shape is not plastic. It is not wood. It looks too smooth, too clean. One of the boys says it looks like a bone. The three of them slide down into the ravine. The air is colder down there. They move slowly, trying not to fall. When they reach the pale shape, they see it clearly. It is a skull. A human skull sitting in the leaves. They freeze. For a moment, no one speaks. Then adrenaline kicks in. They scramble back up the slope and run for help. They call the police and tell them what they found. Within a short time, officers from Strongsville arrive. They block off the path and move carefully down into the ravine. The officers do not know who this person is. They only see that the bones are human. They call the coroner's office, the medical examiner for Cuyahoga County. Soon, the quiet park becomes a crime scene. More police cars arrive. People in heavy coats stand in clusters near the trail. Yellow tape goes up, cutting the ravine away from the rest of the park. Investigators and technicians climb down into the ravine with gloves and bags. They begin to collect the bones. They find a skull and several other bones from the body. There are no clothes, no wallet, no purse, no jewelry that can tell them a name. There is nothing obvious that shows who this person was. The team brings the remains to the medical examiner. In the lab, under bright lights, the coroner begins to study the bones. They look at the skull, the teeth, the shape of the bones to estimate age and sex. From what they see, they conclude this is a young woman, probably around 17 to 25 years old. She is not a child, but not much older than the boys who found her. As the exam continues, the coroner notices something critical on the skull. There is damage. A hole. It is not the kind of damage that comes from weather or from animals. It is clean, sharp. It looks like a gunshot wound. The coroner states that the cause of death was a gunshot to the head. This is not an accident. It is not a natural death. It is homicide. So, in 1975, local police suddenly have a murder on their hands, but they still do not know who she is. Without clothes or papers, without anything that can connect her to a missing person report, they are stuck with a body and no name. At this point, investigators only know a few things. A young woman shot in the head, left or dumped in a wooded ravine near Rocky River. Her bones lie there long enough to lose all soft tissue. No one reported seeing anything suspicious in the park. No one remembers hearing gunshots in the area. There are no obvious signs of a struggle, no clear trace of where she came from. They try to match her to missing women from around Cleveland, but it is 1975. There is no DNA database. There is no CODIS, no national computer system where police can just type in "young woman found in Strongsville" and see if an earlier report matches. Everything is on paper. Many families report missing loved ones informally. Some reports are incomplete. Some never reach the right office. Police look through old reports of missing girls and young women. They compare ages, heights, hair color, and time frames. Nothing clicks. They cannot find a file that fits this woman with the skull in the ravine. Local newspapers print short notes about the discovery. The stories are small, maybe a few lines. They call her "unidentified bones of a young woman found in the park." There is no photo, no long story. It is more like a reminder that something bad happened, and then the paper moves on. Inside the official records, the coroner has to give this case a name. They do not know her real name, so they use a technical label. They log her as "unknown white female bones" and assign a case number. That phrase goes into the cemetery ledger, the big book that lists burials. It is just one dry line among many names and dates. Once the examination is done, the remains are buried. They go to the Potter's Field, the section of the cemetery used for people who are not claimed or not identified or cannot afford a private plot. There she is placed in the ground. There is no headstone with her name. Only that one cold line in the ledger: "unknown, white female, bones." Police keep the case open for a while. They know a young woman was murdered. They know it happened sometime before February 1975. But with no name and no clear suspect, the case quiets down. New crimes happen. New files stack up. Slowly, this one moves to the back of the shelf. Over the next year or so, officers still try from time to time to find a match. They check again with missing person lists from Cleveland and nearby cities. But they keep hitting the same wall. Without modern DNA, without a good national system, and without a proper missing report that fits, this woman stays a mystery. In the community, people remember the story for a short time. A few residents might talk about the girl in the park. But because there is no name, no face, no follow-up in the news, the case does not grow into a local legend. It just fades. Around the same time in 1974, a separate story is unfolding in another part of northern Ohio. In Akron, a teenage girl named Lindapagano goes to a concert. She loves music, the rock of the 1970s, the energy of live shows. After the concert, there is a conflict at home with her stepfather. She leaves, or is told to leave. Then she disappears. Her family does not get clear answers. For reasons that are still debated today, her disappearance does not get properly recorded in the main missing person systems. Some sources say the case is treated more like a family argument than a serious disappearance. Whatever the exact path, the effect is simple and tragic. There is no strong, clear record of Linda's missing status in the places where police later look. As years pass, the young woman from the ravine and Linda's disappearance remain separate in the eyes of authorities. No one connects them. The girl from the ravine is Strongsville Jane Doe, an unknown female in the ground. Lindapagano is a missing teenager whose case never really blooms into a full investigation. Through the 1970s and 1980s, the Potter's Field stays quiet. The anonymous grave of unknown white female bones lies in a row with other simple burials. The ledger line sits in the book, hidden between other names and entries. Staff change. Memories fade. Almost no one in Strongsville talks about her anymore. By the 1990s, the case is still unsolved. DNA technology exists in labs, but is not yet widely used on old, cold cases. Police focus on current problems. There is no extra budget, no special push to dig up very old files like this one. Time works like a slow eraser. Witnesses move away or die. Physical evidence outside the bones is gone. Without a name, Strongsville Jane Doe seems doomed to stay unknown forever. Fast forward to around 2013 or 2014. We are now in a very different world. The internet is part of daily life. There are forums, subreddits, online communities made up of people who love to dig into old stories and cold cases. But even now, in Ohio, in a quiet office, an old cemetery ledger sits on a shelf. One day, a young biology student named Christina Skates is working on a project. She spends time in that cemetery office. She looks through thick, old ledger books, checking names, dates, and causes of death. She expects to see regular entries: John Smith, Mary something, dates of birth, dates of death. Then she sees a line that looks different. It does not have a proper name. It reads something like, unknown, white female, bones. It is short, cold, and direct. It hits her in a strange way. Later she will say, it all started with a single haunting line in a cemetery ledger, unknown white female bones. For her, this is not just a bureaucratic phrase. It is a human life reduced to 4 words. Christina feels that something is wrong. This person lies in the ground without a name, without a story. No one seems to care. She is a biology student, not a detective, not a police officer. But she decides not to just turn the page and move on. She becomes curious. She feels a kind of quiet anger at the idea that someone could be forgotten so completely. At this point, all Christina knows is that a white female, age unknown in the ledger, died, left only as bones, and was buried without identification. She does not know when. She does not know how. She does not know where exactly the body was found, but she wants to find out. She starts with the tools she has: time, curiosity, and access to local archives. She goes to the library. She sits at a microfilm machine, the old devices that let you scroll through tiny pictures of newspapers from decades ago. Hour after hour, she spins through faded pages from the 1970s. She looks for words like unidentified woman, bones found, Strongsville, Park. Finally, she finds it. A small note from 1975 in a local paper. It mentions that human remains, unidentified bones of a young woman, were found in a ravine at Millstream Run Reservation near Rocky River. It is just a few lines, but now the ledger entry has context. This was a real case, a real discovery, not just a clerical mistake. Now Christina has more questions. Where are the police records? Who investigated this? Is there a case file somewhere with more detail? She reaches out to Cleveland Metro Parks, the park system that includes Mill Stream Run. She finds a ranger and asks if there is any old report about a body found near Rocky River in 1975. The ranger could easily say that he is too busy or that the files are lost, but he does not. He goes digging in his own way, searching through their archive. After some time, he finds an old case file. It contains information about the discovery of the bones in the ravine. It also has a photograph of the skull. The ranger sends these materials to Christina. When she opens the file and sees the skull, she understands that this is not just a ledger line. This is a person. The file confirms the medical examiner's conclusion: young female, shot in the head, homicide. Christina now sees the full weight of that dry phrase, unknown white female, bones. She begins to realize that solving this alone might be impossible. She is one person with limited free time and no badge. She also knows that somewhere out there, online, entire communities focus exactly on cases like this. So she takes the next step. She goes to Reddit. She creates a username, Callmice. Under that name, she writes up everything she has found so far. She picks a subreddit called r/unsolvedmysteries, a group with hundreds of thousands of members who love to look at cold cases and missing persons. She posts the story there, asking for help. One later description of her choice says, she chose a subreddit, r/unsolvedmysteries, a group with over 400,000 members focused on cold cases and missing persons. In other words, she is throwing this quiet, forgotten Ohio case into a huge global crowd of armchair detectives. In her post, she explains the ledger entry, the discovery in 1975, the location in Mill Stream Run, the fact that the woman was shot in the head. She shares what details she can from the old report. She includes the photograph of the skull if allowed, or at least a description. Then she invites others to help identify Strongsville Jane Doe, as people begin to call her. The response is not instant, but it builds. People on Reddit begin commenting with questions, theories, and ideas. Some users cross-reference the Strongsville discovery with missing persons databases from the 1970s. Others use advanced search techniques to comb through old newspapers. They look for any missing girl whose description fits: white female, late teens or early 20s, disappeared before 1975, in or near northern Ohio. Soon the case moves beyond Reddit. A dedicated thread appears on WebSleuths, a forum where people deeply into true crime and forensics gather to discuss unsolved cases. There, the story of Strongsville Jane Doe gets its own space. Users post updates, links, and hypotheses. Christina, under the name Callmice, stays active. She answers questions, adds new details when she finds them, and keeps pushing the idea that this woman deserves a name. People from different states, even different countries, join the search. One of the key people who enters the story now is Carl Koppelman. He is an artist who works on forensic reconstructions and a moderator on WebSleuths. When he sees the case, he offers to help by creating a facial reconstruction for the victim. Using the photograph of the skull, he begins to build an image of what Strongsville Jane Doe might have looked like when she was alive. It is not perfect, but it is far better than a skull photo. It shows a young woman's face with estimated features, the line of the jaw, the shape of the nose, the cheekbones. This gives the community something they can compare to actual photos of missing girls. Across Reddit and WebSleuths, users start to sort through possible matches. They open old missing persons pages, local police lists, genealogical sites, social security death index entries. They make spreadsheets where they list names, ages, dates of disappearance, locations, and physical features. They mark which ones might fit this Jane Doe. Many possibilities appear. Some seem promising at first. They consider missing hippie girls from other states, young women who traveled by hitchhiking and vanished in the 70s. Some of those cases match by age and time period. But then the details break down. Maybe the missing girl vanished too far away. Maybe her body was later found somewhere else. Maybe dental records do not match. False leads pile up. The community discusses them, tests them, and then crosses them out. Each time, it is a little bit frustrating, but also a sign that they are being careful. They are not just grabbing the first name that fits and calling it solved. On Reddit, some users dig deeper into technical details. They talk about the angle and nature of the gunshot wound. They wonder what kind of situation this might suggest: a close shot, an execution-style killing, a chaotic event. But without full medical data, these are guesses. People remind each other that speculation is not proof. Another common topic in these discussions is the system itself. Many users are angry that in the 1970s there was no central, reliable way to record missing teens like Linda. They point out that if her disappearance had been properly logged, with data shared across counties and states, Strongsville Jane Doe might have been identified much sooner. Instead, bureaucratic problems and old technology kept this victim in the dark for decades. As the case gains more attention online, it also starts to reach official ears. In 2016, the buzz and pressure lead to a real change. The coroner's office in Cuyahoga County and local police reopen the old file. They take Strongsville Jane Doe out of deep storage and put her back on the active list as a victim to be identified. Investigators now have something they did not have in 1975: DNA testing. They realize that if they can get genetic material from the victim's bones, they might match her to living relatives. But to do that, they need to get to the bones. That means exhumation. In 2016 and 2017, they worked together with the internet community and with park officials to push for this step. Formal requests are written and filed. They ask permission to dig up the remains from the potter's field. For the officials, this is not a light decision. Exhumations are complex and emotional. But they agree. There is another problem. The grave is old and not clearly marked. In potter's fields, graves often have no permanent stones. Over decades, small markers can disappear. The exact spot of unknown white female bones is no longer obvious. They need a way to find her. The solution is Joradar, a device that sends waves into the ground and shows where there are changes, like a coffin or a grouping of bones. Teams go into the cemetery with this equipment. They carefully scan the area where the ledger says she should be. Slowly, a picture forms. They locate a buried structure that likely holds the remains. Once they are confident, they move forward. In 2017, under gray sky and with a small group of professionals present, they begin the exhumation. Coroner staff, crime scene technicians, and park representatives all stand by. For them, this is not just a procedure. It feels like pulling someone back into the light after being buried twice, once in earth, once in paperwork. They find the remains and carefully remove them from the ground. They are just bone now, but that is enough. From the skull and other bones, they take small samples. These go into special containers and are shipped out to a lab that can handle difficult DNA tests. Sources mention places like the University of North Texas, which often works on unidentified remains from across the country. While the lab does its slow, careful work, the internet detectives continue theirs. Over time, one name starts to appear more and more often in the threads: Linda Marie Pagano. Someone notices that a teenage girl named Linda disappeared in 1974 from the Akron area. She had an argument with her stepfather after a concert and then was gone. Her case is not well documented in big national systems, but bits of information about her exist. People find old references, family stories, and small notes scattered online. Users begin to compare Linda's situation to Strongsville Jane Doe. The timeline fits. Linda disappears in 1974. The bones are found in February 1975. The location fits more than people first realize. Akron is not far from Cleveland. Strongsville is in the Cleveland area. A drive from Akron to the ravine where the bones were found is not impossible. It is actually quite direct. Carl Koppelman's facial reconstruction is placed side by side with photos of Linda. People study the shape of the face, the nose, the jaw. Some say the match looks strong. Others are more cautious. They remind the group that reconstructions can be off. But the idea that this anonymous Jane Doe might be Linda begins to gain real weight. Different users dig into family records. They find Linda's siblings. They find hints about the original investigation or lack of one. They talk about the stepfather and the fight. They form theories about how a murder and body disposal could have happened, and how the body might have ended up in Mill Stream Run. But again, they know these parts are still guesses. What matters most is proving whether Jane Doe is Linda through DNA. As the official investigators and the lab work openly now, the family comes into the story. Linda's siblings are contacted and asked a difficult question. Would they give DNA samples so that the lab can test for a match? This is not a simple request. It means reopening painful memories and facing the possibility of a final answer after decades of uncertainty. Her siblings agree. They provide samples of their DNA. The lab now has two sides of the puzzle: the bone DNA from Strongsville Jane Doe and the living family DNA from Linda's brothers or sisters. With that, they can run familial tests, looking for shared markers that would show a blood relationship. The internet community waits. People who have followed the case for months or years now check for updates regularly. Some say they feel like they are part of this investigation, even though they sit in front of screens far away from Ohio. Weeks pass. Then months. Lab work is slow and careful. It takes time to pull DNA out of old bones and to compare it to fresh samples. Christina, Carl, and many others keep watching, hoping, and trying not to assume too much. On June 29, 2018, after 44 years of silence and uncertainty, the DNA results finally come back with a clear, definitive answer. Now, let me walk you through what investigators eventually pieced together. The tests show that the DNA from the bones in Strongsville matches the DNA from Linda's siblings. The match is strong enough to be clear: this is family. This means Strongsville Jane Doe, the anonymous victim found in the ravine in 1975, is Linda Marie Pagano. After 44 years from her disappearance and 43 years from the discovery of her remains, Linda finally gets her name back. One source summarizes the result in a stark phrase: on June 29, 2018, after 44 years of silence and uncertainty, the DNA results from the University of North Texas finally gave a definitive answer. Another puts it even more bluntly: woman 82483 was Linda Pagano. That number, 82483, is one of the technical labels in the coroner's system. Now it is attached to a real identity. With this, the main question of the online search is solved. Christina's haunting ledger line now has a face, a family, and a story. The coroner's office and local police hold a press conference. They tell the public that the remains from the Strongsville ravine belong to Linda. They explain that a student and online volunteers helped push this case back into the light. They praise the role of Reddit and web sleuths in keeping the case alive. For Linda's family, the news is both painful and relieving. They finally know that she died. They know roughly where her life ended, in a ravine at Millstream Run with a gunshot wound to the head. They also know that for decades her body lay in an anonymous grave labeled "Unknown White Female Bones" in the ledger. That knowledge hurts, but it also confirms the need for what Christina did. The family can now claim Linda's remains. They arrange a burial under her real name. In interviews, they describe her as a kind, sensitive teenager who loved music and had normal dreams of independence, like many young people in the 1970s. They talk about the pain of not knowing for so long, and about the strange reality that internet strangers help solve what official systems did not. For Christina and the online community, the identification is a powerful moment. It proves that their work was not just playing detective for fun. Their hours spent reading microfilm, making spreadsheets, drawing faces, and arguing over details led to a concrete, human outcome. A lost person got her name back. Christina becomes an example of how an ordinary person can trigger a chain of events that changes a family's history. At the same time, the case does not fully close. The identification answers who, but not who, did it. The person who shot Linda in the head and left her in that ravine has never been formally named or charged. Police and prosecutors say that the murder investigation is still open. But they also admit that after 4 decades, with witnesses gone and evidence thin, solving the homicide part is very hard. Online, many people focus on Linda's stepfather. They point to the fight after the concert, the fact that she vanished right after a conflict with him. They build theories of how he might be involved and how the body might have traveled from Akron to Strongsville. But official sources do not confirm this. There is no court case, no conviction. So in the formal record, he remains a person of interest in some minds, but not a proven killer. After 2018, the story of Strongsville Jane Doe turns into a modern parable that true crime communities like to tell. It shows how new technology, like DNA tests, and new social structures, like Reddit and web sleuths, can work together with old paper records. It also shows how a single line in a cemetery ledger can lead to a huge digital search. Reporters and YouTube creators make long videos and podcasts about the case. They interview Christina, Linda's siblings, police officers, and forensic experts. They talk about other Jane Doe cases where similar methods eventually brought answers, like Tammy Alexander, Margaret Fedorov, and others. Strongsville Jane Doe becomes part of this map of digital crusades. In the end, the system learns something too. Officials see that missing person records need to be complete and shared. They see that old cases can sometimes be solved if citizens and professionals work together. They also see that a ledger entry like "Unknown White Female Bones" is not just a line in a book. It can be a call to action if the right person reads it. For Linda herself, the biggest change is simple but deep. She is no longer a Jane Doe in Pottersfield. She is Linda Marie Pagano, remembered by her name, her face, her family, and a story that many people around the world now know. For Christina, it starts and ends with that first feeling, She once saw a cold, bureaucratic phrase and felt, very clearly, that it was wrong. She followed that feeling, step by step, until there was one less unknown in that book. In a way, everything in this story grows out of one quiet moment in front of an old ledger and from the decision not to look away. As you lie down tonight and let this story fade, you might think about how many other nameless lines are still sitting in dusty books and forgotten databases, waiting for someone curious or kind to notice them. That's it for tonight's story. Thank you for staying with it all the way to the end. If you enjoy drifting through this case, you can explore more stories here on the channel. There are already others like this one, and many more are on the way. If there's a case you'd like to hear about next time, or any thoughts you have about Linda and this digital search from the cemetery, feel free to share them in the comments below. This was Sleep to Stories. Good night, and sleep well.